The Honourable Member for Fort Rouge.
Miigwech, Madam Speaker. We know that the Minister of Health has stated his support for Jordan's Principle, including in this House, as has the Premier. Jordan's Principle says First Nations kids should get the medical care they need without delay, regardless of whether it's the provincial or federal government that has to pay. But now the province has told the Northern Regional Health Authority to cut $6 million from their budget by cancelling uninsured services. Some of these are services that First Nations kids should be provided with if we are to live up to Jordan's Principle. How can the minister say he is doing everything he can to advance Jordan's Principle when he's making $6 million cuts to some of the very services First Nation kids need?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Active Living.
Well, Madam Speaker, I appreciated last session the question from the member opposite of Jordan's Principle. He asked me to raise the issue directly with the federal minister. I did raise the matter directly with the federal minister on his behalf and on behalf of all members of this House. I received a response from the federal Minister of Health that they will continue to work on the implementation of Jordan's Principle nationally. I did that on his behalf. He responded and thanked me for that, and I continue to work with this member and other members of the House on that, Madam Speaker.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member for Fort Rouge on a supplementary question.
Miigwech, Madam Speaker. I am pleased to advocate for the federal government to do its share when it comes to living up to Jordan's Principle. But that federal funding will not be used by the First Nation kids who need it if the provincial services aren't offered in the first place. Which brings to mind the $6 million cuts being implemented in the Northern Regional Health Authority. Will the minister back off these $6 million cuts to the Northern Regional Health Authority and recommit today to the full implementation of Jordan's Principle by both the federal and provincial governments?
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Active Living.
Well, I think that the member knows full well that the greatest threat to whether it's frontline services or things that we all care about, like the Jordan's Principle, is to not have a sustainable system, to have spending that is not sustainable in the healthcare system or other places within government, Madam Speaker. That is the legacy that was left by the previous government. That is why we are setting a new course. That is why we're ensuring that RHAs and all parts of the healthcare system recognize the value of ensuring that healthcare is sustainable by living within the means of the healthcare system each and every year. I'm glad that the Northern Health Authority and other health authorities have embraced that and seen that as important to ensure sustainability of the system and improve things like Jordan's Principle now and in the future, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Fort Rouge on a final supplementary.
Miigwech, Madam Speaker. Jordan's Principle cannot be improved if the services are not provided by the provincial government in the first place. And I'm happy to play my part. I'm happy to call on our Liberal colleagues to do their part and demand that the federal government do the right thing as well. But first, the province needs to ensure that those frontline healthcare services are available to the First Nations kids themselves.
Right.
The federal funding has to be met with provincial government services, including those targeted by the minister's $6 million cuts. Will the minister back off those $6 million cuts and commit to the full implementation of all funding and services required to make Jordan's Principle a reality?
The Honourable Minister of Health, Seniors and Active Living.
Well, and the member opposite, while he wasn't sitting in the chamber during the 17 years of the NDP, he actually repeats exactly the problem that happened over the last 17 years. Every year, the former government decided not to make difficult decisions. Every year, they decided to simply forget about the future of people who are going to need health care in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. And they delayed decisions. They delayed them year after year after year. And that's exactly why we have the difficult challenges that we have, Madam Speaker. It's exactly why Manitobans decided almost a year ago to head to a different path, a path where there is actual fiscal management and sustainability. He shouldn't try to repeat the problems of the past, Madam Speaker.